Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and today we're going to be checking out a new Z690 motherboard from Asus, specifically the Rog Maximus Z690 Hero. So if you're not familiar with the Hero, it's essentially the entry-level board to the pure ROG array of Asus motherboards. Been around for a while, we've had it for a few generations now, and it generally stands above the ROG Strix range and sits below the Maximus Formula and Maximus Extreme, those kind of boards, but it's still a very, very high-end motherboard. So if you're going to be opting for something like this, you're going to want to be pushing your PC to its limits, or having loads and loads of features or overclocking and that kind of stuff. Generally, it's kind of considered overkill to be going for a ROG board, but me being a PC enthusiast, I've owned plenty of ROG boards over the year just because they're cool and I'm a PC enthusiast. So I can fully appreciate that there's a lot of interest in this board. Certainly on the Instagram post, you know, I had 1,000 likes hit on the Instagram post pretty quickly. So I know that you guys out there are loving this board as well, just in the way that it looks. There is one small problem with it though, which is the price. And here in the UK, we're looking at £500 for this motherboard. In the US, around $600. Now this is by far the most expensive Hero board that we've ever seen. I still remember them being like £200 to £300 tops, so to be another £200 on top of that does kind of make your wallet squeal a bit, if I'm honest. So what we'll be looking at today is just why this board costs that much money. I would say initially though that I thought if it's just based on weight, this board wins hands down. It easily justifies its price tag, because when I picked up the box, I thought that Asus had mistakenly put 3 motherboards inside, or its accessory box included some weightlifting gear or something, because it weighed an absolute ton. And the main reason for that is all these heat sinks around the CPU socket cooling the VRMs and the power delivery. So we'll be checking that out later, as well as all the features on the board to work out whether you should go for this one. Of course, DDR5 on this board as well. A bit of a slightly bigger upgrade to other boards that we'll be looking at, such as the tough Z690 board from Asus and some others from other manufacturers as well. So a hefty upgrade, also requires DDR5 memory, but does it justify its price in any way, shape or form? Or is this kind of just drool-worthy stuff of dreams that we're just never going to be able to afford? So let's take a look. Before then though, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications if you want to be notified, which I do suggest you do, because I tend to chuck these videos out there willy-nilly some of the time. And also don't forget to comment and like on this video as well. So always really interested to hear what your situation is. Are you going to be upgrading with DDR4 or DDR5? Which of Intel's 12th gen CPUs are you going to be going for? Do you have an AMD system? Are you planning on upgrading to Intel's 12th gen CPUs maybe? So always super interested to hear your thoughts and comments in the comments box below, and in the description box below we've got links to a whole bunch of cool stuff, including the latest 3 CPUs that you can buy on Amazon, and a few other bits besides, as well as links to my social media accounts, because you definitely want to follow me on there as well. Lots of eye candy being churned out on there regularly. So without further ado, let's take a look at the board. Okay, so first I thought we would take a quick look at the accessory box, and here we have one of the reasons why this box weighs so much, but of course we've got the fabulous motherboard itself. So here we've got a ROG expansion card, so it's the Hyper M.2 card, and I'm pretty sure that one of these ports on here is PCI Express 5, so the board itself can support PCIe 5 on 2 PCI Express slots, I believe. So one of the M.2 ports here is PCI Express 5. I don't think there's any sign of PCI Express 5 SSDs on the horizon yet, but they probably will be in the next year or two, I guess. But the main reason for using this card is just to expand the number of ports that you get in terms of M.2s. and also to provide them with this massive heatsink here, but maybe even just ease of access. You know, if you just want to quickly swap out your storage, swap your SSDs over or something like that, then this card is a great way of doing that. So you get one of those included in the box, and it weighs an absolute ton. Elsewhere in the box, a USB flash drive, so that's got all your drivers on it in there. So that's a really nice move from Asus, and it's just handy certainly from a reviewer's point of view to have something like that. It saves you going on the website, especially in launches when there isn't a website to go to and you're having to scramble around for drivers and stuff. You get the usual manual as well, so we're going to get rid of that so we can have a look at the rest of the accessories. So you've got a desktop Wi-Fi aerial. I guess that's probably magnetic. I'm just going to try it on a cupboard down there. Yep, it's magnetic as well. So no problems there. You've also got a graphics card support down here. So this thing kind of attaches to something in your case or on the motherboard. I can't actually remember how it actually stands, but it essentially just acts like a motherboard support to stop your graphics card drooping. So you have an extension cable for 3-pin RGB connectors there, a whole bunch of SATA cables. I think there are 4 on there, and we have 6 SATA ports on the motherboard itself. You also get, I believe these are, oh no, it's just more RGB connectors, I think, and that is pretty much it. I think you get one of the small front panel connector things there just to make installing your front panel that bit easier. I'll just have a quick look under here to see if there's anything more. I've got a few more bits, but it's just like your usual stuff, like extra manuals and stickers and those kind of things. So the main accessory then is of course the expansion card, which you need to factor in when you're buying this board, because that is going to be it's not going to be the entire reason why the board costs this much, but it is one reason. So what we'll do now is close the box and we'll have a take a look at the board. Okay, so here we are looking at the motherboard then, and there's a whole bunch of things to go through on the board. To start with, just looking at the size of these VRM heatsinks. They are absolutely enormous, but they do still sit within the confines of the I/O shield at the back there, the integrated I/O shield, but they are still pretty monstrous. Cooling those 20+1 power phases, I believe. I think they're teamed power phases on this board, but they are pretty special, it has to be said. They're absolutely enormous, so I don't think we'll have any problems with VRM temperatures there at all. I will put the VRM temperatures below in just a pop-out box so you can see what they actually were, because I can't remember off the top of my head. And looking at the key features here, I know someone mentioned on Instagram, they were asking what the extra power button here for. According to the manual, it is not for the PCI Express slots. It is for this port here, which of course is the Type-C header for your case. So this port here, obviously connecting your standard 6-pin power connector, it allows you to provide 60 watts of power to that Type-C header. So that's really, really useful if you're going to be charging a Type-C compatible device such as a laptop or something like that. You're going to be able to charge it a lot quicker than you would otherwise. So that's a pretty cool feature to have. And just moving up around here, you've got the usual power and reset buttons. That's actually a flex key button, which I think you can reassign to something else, but out of the box, it's configured to be the reset button, and I just love these things. They're so handy for reviewing motherboards. Then spinning it around, you've got 4 fan headers here. I believe it's 8 or 9 in total on this motherboard. So if we head down the south end of the board, you've got a water pump header there, which I believe can output up to 36 watts over that header. So it's either that one or it's a high amp one. I think it might be the water pump header, so it's that one there. So that's pretty cool. So you can actually hook up a custom water cooling pump to that header if you have an adapter to convert from 4-pin to Molex. And down here you can see a whole bunch of water cooling system gubbins. So you've got a flow indicator, water in and water out sensors. And down here you've got the thermal probe header, which Asus in its infinite wisdom has decided to remove from its mini ITX motherboard for Z690. So yeah, that was a little bit of a disappointment, but at least it's here on the ATX, on its ATX sibling. So a whole bunch more fan headers down here, and of course we've got loads more RGB headers. So I think in total you've got 3 3-pin digital RGB connectors and another 4-pin down there. So looking at the ports, we've got 3 M.2 ports on the motherboard itself and another 2 in the expansion card that we looked at in the box. So if I just take the heatsink off, it's a single large heatsink down here. Both M.2 SSDs cooled on the top, but only the one on the right, which I believe is PCI Express 4. I don't know whether that one is. I don't think it is. I think that's the reason why this one is cooled and that one isn't, is because it is PCI Express 4.0, and yeah, I think I can actually see that on the diagram down there. So this port supports SATA M.2 SSDs as well as PCI Express 3.0. It will support PCI Express 4.0 as well, but it won't run at 4.0 speed. If you've got a 4.0 SSD, you need to use this one. Or if you've got any other SSDs and you want the bottom of it cooled as well as the top. So quite handy, and something I love about recent Asus boards is the tool-free M.2 latch. So let's get one that's not caked in thermal pad at the moment. By rotating, let me just switch hands here and then you might be able to see what I'm actually talking about. So if you flick that little thing around, I'll just see if I can zoom in as much as I can there. That little latch, you can just flick round and a small kind of slither of it just kind of rides over the top of the SSD, and that locks the SSD in place. No fiddly screws, no dropping them on the floor, no losing them in the box. It's just simple and it works. And from my point of view as a reviewer, like the power and reset buttons and everything else, that's a huge boon. I absolutely love that feature. Another feature that is a real boon is the quick release mechanism for the primary graphics slot. So if I close this latch up here for the top 16 times slot, so you'll see now it's actually closed, but we have a magic button here. So if I press that and you keep looking at the latch, boom. So that basically allows you to release your graphics cards if you can't actually get your fingers at this button. And we've probably all been there, right? You just can't seem to get down and your screwdriver's in another room or something and you're just trying to get your graphics card out and you just can't. You know, mashing this thing with your finger. Sometimes I've even mashed it with a screwdriver and it still hasn't popped open, but this thing will allow you to do that. From my point of view as a reviewer, that's an absolutely amazing feature to have. So well done Asus, because if you have a pretty big graphics card with a back plate and it's going to be sandwiched between this SSD, kind of this heatsink rather here, it's going to be really difficult getting at this thing down here. So that's a really, really cool feature from Asus there, and I will be looking forward to using that on the ROG Apex board that I'll be using for some benchmarking soon. So down here is the I/O panel, and what I should mention first is this mirror-like finish on the top. That is basically a big LED array down there, so there's lots of cool funky stuff that goes on with that one, and it just looks really cool if you're into RGB lighting and that kind of stuff, that is. And down here we have the I/O panel. So usual features for a ROG board, you've got the CMOS clear button and the USB BIOS flashback. You've got video outputs and that kind of stuff. Thunderbolt 4 support, of course, as well as an additional Type-C port. Reasonable amount of USB ports. I think that's going to be enough for most people, and most of those are, of course, USB 3.0 or faster. And again, commenting on the on a guy that left a comment on Instagram, he mentioned that he was disappointed to see only one Ethernet port here. Well, it is 2.5 gigabit after all. It's not 10 gigabit, sadly, but you do only get one. Most of us only need one. If you need two, then just get an expansion card. But again, you know, there is space for it, and you might expect it given the price of the motherboard. So over here then we've got 802.11ax Wi-Fi, and you've got that magnetic antenna in the box as well, which is going to be enough for most people. Plus you get the latest Realtek 4000 series audio codec onboard audio, although that's obviously rebranded ROG Supreme FX or something like that. So that's pretty much it from the motherboard point of view, and we can go to the conclusion. So what do we make of the Rog Maximus Z690 Hero then? Well, it is absolutely dripping with features. You've got Thunderbolt, you've got all kinds of crazy cooling features, you've got loads of stuff on the back panel, you've got the crazy cooling array here for the VRMs, which kept the VRMs super cool, loads of M.2 ports, the expansion card and everything else. So all in all, it is a crazy package, and it definitely seems like the Hero is now not kind of an entry-level ROG board. It feels much more premium than that. It's not as simple as it used to be. I mean, a lot of the ROG boards that we saw a few years ago, the Hero included, were kind of on a level playing field with the tough boards that we're seeing now, albeit with a few extra bells and whistles, but certainly in terms of price. So things are getting more expensive. I don't know why that is specifically, maybe microchip shortage. There's had to be a lot of R&D going into this motherboard. You've got DDR5 support, although that should in theory make the motherboard cheaper, not more expensive, considering that the power circuitry or the power controllers are now, voltage controllers are now on the memory and not on the motherboard. So that doesn't seem to have worked out here, does it? So you've got Thunderbolt 4 support as well, so that could have an impact on the price. It definitely doesn't make a motherboard any cheaper, and in the past it's made them a heck of a lot more expensive, so that's definitely going on here as well. Overall, it is definitely a drool-worthy motherboard. The PC enthusiast in me wants to own something like this, especially if I'm upgrading to a 12th gen CPU, you know, 12600K, fantastic CPU, 12700K, slightly more multi-threaded performance, 12900K, the big daddy out there at the moment with its 16 cores and just crazy performance across the board, even at stock speed. So the problem that this board does have is with the 12900K, which is probably what you're going to want to consider owning if you're going to be owning this motherboard. You know, you probably wouldn't want to own this motherboard with a Core i5 12600K, which costs half the price. That just doesn't really make sense. So the problem with the 12900K is that it's not really at its best when it's overclocked. It's not like the 2600K where I've managed to push it past both of its all-core and its single-core boost frequencies on an all-core overclock. So an all-core overclock on the 12600K is definitely worth it if you know how to do it. The problem with the 12900K though is that generally the power consumption increases massively. The thermals increase massively when you do a manual overclock, but you don't really get much extra performance, which means that motherboards like this are kind of questionable value if they're not going to offer, you know, the extra cooling and everything that you need for overclocking a CPU like that. Or actually, that should be the other way around, that it's all very well them having the cooling ability, because it does have the cooling ability to deal with that kind of stuff. The overclock that I managed on the 12900K, you know, all cores, 5.1 gigahertz pretty easily. Probably get a bit higher than that if I spent a bit more time with it. But really, that's probably not where I would run a 12900K if I owned one. I would almost certainly run it at stock speed, maybe even undervolt it or something like that, because it's a crazy fast CPU at stock speed. And as soon as you overclock it, everything in terms of power and thermals just goes sky high. So that's probably the main issue I have with this board. It's not so much the price. The price is extremely high, don't get me wrong, but really it's just what is all this extra paraphernalia actually being used for? So, you know, if you're an extreme overclocker, then you'll probably want to go for the Apex, which is generally geared more towards extreme overclockers. But in the kind of mid-range of overclockingness, if that's even a word, it's usually boards like this that you want to go for. But the problem is there isn't the CPU out there that you can use with that or to take advantage of it, at least not without those crazy high thermals and just general lack of efficiency, because the 12900K just, you know, the Alder Lake core just isn't really designed to run at those crazy high frequencies and power and voltages that we're pumping through it when we're overclocking it. It's meant to run a lot cooler than that, a lot lower frequencies than that, where it's in kind of its more efficient envelope. So yeah, I love this board, don't get me wrong, in spite of the fact that it costs £500 or $600. I'm just not convinced I've really got a use for it. And that's a bit of a shame, really, because you kind of want to have a use for it. I want to have a CPU that I can overclock massively, and even if I didn't really care about the thermals or anything, the benefits from overclocking the 12900K in terms of performance just aren't really there. So to close, I think it's kind of a motherboard that I would consider owning. I certainly wouldn't worry about VRM or M.2 temperatures, especially with the expansion card and these huge heatsinks that we've got here to cool the power circuitry. But I think you'd have to question what you actually need it for. Are you going to, do you have plenty of cash to throw around, and you're going to be building perhaps a really kick-ass water-cooled system, maybe with a 3080 Ti or 3090 or something like that? Then yeah, sure, if you've got a spare $500 or $600, £500 laying around, then I'd say absolutely go for this board. But if you're looking to really make the most of your money in any way, shape or form, and you want to be able to overclock your CPU, then you probably wouldn't be going for the 12900K in the first place. You'd be going for the 12600K and maybe building like a mid-range to high-end content creation rig, or a gaming rig, of course. So great job, Asus. Thanks for sending me the sample over, but it's kind of the end result is, while it's a fantastic motherboard, I absolutely love it, you just have to bear in mind that you might not see the benefits of everything on this motherboard in terms of performance from the extra price that you're paying for the Hero. So again, thanks to Asus for sending the sample over. Don't forget to check out my other videos and my Instagram channel, as well as my other social media channels, all in the description below. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Check you out later.